Just a warning, this is less about why psychoanalysis is used in film analysis, although I will try to touch on that, and more about Freud's specific interpretation of the uncanny and how the examples he lists are still widely applicable to modern media. Basically, I'm just having trouble justifying this to myself. What is it to be uncanny? Many films have rained terror onto audiences through wielding it, and yet this style of terror still has a somewhat difficult to nail down quality about it. We could explore how it's been used in the past, such as in The Shining, or Ex Machina, or Vertigo. Instead, I'm going to use the Trivago commercials as an example. Most people who have read a news article about Boston Dynamics that makes the same joke every time about murder bots are familiar with the concept of the Uncanny Valley, wherein things get creepier the more human an object appears, up until it appears convincingly human. However, the uncanny is not a concept that ends at a valley graph. Sigmund Freud was one of the first to cover the topic in his 1919 essay, Das Unheimliche, I'm sorry for that, wherein he tries to pin down what exactly makes something uncanny. As he states at the beginning, he wants to set out to list all the properties of persons, things, sense impressions, experiences, and situations which arouse in us the feeling of uncanniness. However, this is Freud we're talking about. He does tie it down to his signature style of psychosexual analysis. That's what you would expect. It is of note, however, that it will be more useful to take a less literal interpretation of Freud's theories. See, what makes the Trivago commercial so memorable is how they place the uncanny within the appealing veneer of a nice man telling you about a hotel finding app. Trivago commercials are widely recognizable, yet their appeal, or off-puttingness, is equally difficult to pin down. So basically, according to Freud, all of the things that motivate the unsettling feelings of the uncanny are related to repression, either of childhood complexes, which is a mode of thought or patterns of behavior you have subconsciously smothered as you grew up, or prehistoric instincts, which are modes of thought you may have inherited from ancient ancestors, where your fundamental views of the world are less logical and more intuitive. Animism, magic and sorcery, the omnipotence of thoughts, man's attitudes towards death, involuntary repetition, the castration complex, and involuntary repetition comprise practically all the factors which turn something frightening into something uncanny. All of these things challenge our fundamental assumptions about what we can expect reality to behave like. To experience any of these things is to be made aware that we do not actually comprehend the world that we live in. The examples he uses are varied, and even he acknowledges his reticence in claiming to have totally pinned down what is going on with the uncanny, particularly in the psychological aspect of it. What is it about the aberration of something familiar that triggers our self-preservation instincts? Why is this crawling, uncomfortable feeling reserved for scenarios where the comfortable is only slightly warped? Why can't I get the unseeing eyes of the Trivago man out of my mind? The first of these examples is when elements of a living thing are applied to a typically non-living thing, an idea encompassed by the Uncanny Valley, also known as the living object. So you might think of a robot or a doll. The inverse of this is the inanimate body, which is an object that perfectly resembles something that typically would be living, like a corpse. This can serve to make us feel uncomfortable over whether we are treating a sentient being like an object, or drawing attention to the mechanical aspects of the functioning of the human mind, in tandem with the parts of it that are plainly out of control. The act of a man addressing you, the viewer, directly, in a commercial that was shot elsewhere, at a different time, rendering this an afterimage with no consciousness, is kind of uncanny, in a way. There are also events, more commonly found in horror fiction, that are related to our fear that our fundamental beliefs in reality will be proven wrong, be it through reality itself being of a different nature than that which we assumed it to be, or our perception of reality failing us. An uncertainty on whether certain perceived events are real or not, such as stories with unreliable narrators, is part of fiction that allows us to explore the subjective point of view, and it places us in the uncanny, as our means to test our belief in the laws of reality is made even more unsteady when we consider the possibility that we cannot trust even our own senses. This ties into the uncertainty in the structure of the nature of reality in uncertain architecture, meaning a physical landscape that either changes or repeats, perhaps with minor but noticeable changes upon review. The doppelganger, also known as a double, is a fear associated with a person escaping death, but also somehow tied to castration, of course, thanks Freud. Twins, or one person in multiple bodies, or multiple people in one body, are also a widely known fear. See creepy twins as one of the main two ways in which twins are depicted in media, the other being twins who are exactly the same at everything and say everything at the same time, ha ha ha. And when I say escaping death, I mean that even after dying, another part of a person could still exist in the world. That's the sort of idea behind it. In fiction, this can be multiple different people representing the same idea or thing, like maybe a ghost, as it is split between the body and the soul. This can be tied to a certain belief once held when we were children in a sort of magic, where things in the universe are inexplicably connected, whether that be in regards to the mental states of a person having physical effect on the world around them, such as someone cursing you with the evil eye, or the ability of the mind to find meaningless patterns in the world. A word keeps popping up in different contexts. An example would be to wish that a man were to have all of the bones in his body broken, only for that man to be involved in an accident soon after that would break all of the bones in his body. This is the visibility of the hand of fate, a reminder of our loss of control over the world. Even if we did not have any direct involvement in the scenario, we might imagine that simply by the act of thinking it, we made it happen. Additionally alarming is someone or something pretending to be something they clearly aren't, or lying in a way where they know we know they are lying, but they wanted us to know in the first place. Is that malice? Someone whose presence in the world is not interacted to as we might expect, or whose presence in reality is not certain. They just stare at him, like they're his little puppets and he's the god king of the Twilight Zone. In regards to a fear of the functioning of the human mind, psychoanalysis itself can be seen as uncanny, and how it compares the human mind to a working object, like a machine. It is the attempts of the subjective human mind to create an objective view of itself. There will no doubt be some hard truths that will appear in that endeavor. Oh, here's a weird one. An extra fun example includes the fear of being buried alive, which Freud, of course, ties to the intrauterine experience. A lot of fears are related to the uterus, apparently, according to Freud, such as drowning in a body of water. Oh, I think I've lost my trail, so to speak. Why do any of these examples matter? Where am I going? Psychoanalysis grew up around the same time as cinema, and in the way that cinema wanted to dissect the workings of how we perceived reality, psychoanalysis wanted to dissect the human mind, to understand how we process the information we receive through perception in more of a mechanical but also flawed way. The subjective, perception-based experience of media is comparable to the act of perceiving reality, and can allow us enough distance to recognize our own subjectivity in the matter. While his theories are antiquated, they aren't hokey. Freud, despite his mommy issues, worked to try to understand the human mind, and established the foundation of dream theory, selective memory, and the subconscious. He made huge bounds in the fields of psychology for his time. Wait a second, this is supposed to be about Trivago commercials. Oh wait, art itself is a mental exercise where it's fun to figure out symbolism and allegory, not necessarily because it's an objective purpose, but because recognizing these things in a different context is like a little thought puzzle where you try to figure out what the creators are trying to say about it, or the world. Basically, something is art when someone considers it to be art, or in the attempt to use it for the basis of mental exercise into an exploration of its meaning. This is why a definition of objectively good art is whack as heck.